The massive space station hung in the darkness between three dying stars. Its metal walls stretched for kilometers in every direction. This was the Galactic Defense Academy, where young beings from across the galaxy came to learn how to fight and protect their worlds. Commander Velthar walked through the main corridor watching new recruits arrive. His bug-like eyes could see in many directions at once. He had trained thousands of young warriors over the years, but today felt different. Today humans were coming to the academy for the first time. The transport ships docked one by one. Each ship brought different types of alien beings. The Zephyrians stepped out first. They looked like walking crystals that caught the light and threw rainbows on the walls. Their bodies were hard as diamonds, and they moved with musical sounds. Next came the Gorlaks. These giants had 4 arms, each bigger than a human body. Their skin was thick and scarred from many battles. They stomped when they walked, and their voices sounded like thunder. Other species moved away from them quickly. The insect-like cricks crawled out in groups. They clicked and buzzed to each other in their own language. Their big compound eyes looked everywhere at once. They stayed close together like they were afraid of being alone. The nebula folk floated in special suits filled with gas. Their real bodies were like clouds that changed colors when they moved. Without their suits, they would spread out into the air and die. Then the human transport docked. 2 figures walked out, and Commander Velthar felt something cold run down his spine. They looked so small and soft compared to the other species. The male human was named Dae-Ho Kim. He had dark hair and darker eyes that seemed to see everything. The female was So Young Park. She moved like a dancer, but something about her made the commander think of hunting cats. The humans wore simple clothes and carried small bags. They had no natural armor like the Gorlaks, no crystal bodies like the Zephyrians, no hard shells like the Cricks. Their skin looked thin and easy to damage, but something was wrong with this picture. Other recruits gave the humans space without knowing why. The Gorlaks, who usually pushed everyone around, stepped aside when the humans walked by. The Cricks stopped their buzzing conversations. Even the proud Zephyrians seemed nervous. Velthar had read the secret files about Earth. The planet was marked as Class 12 Deathworld. This meant everything there tried to kill everything else. The weather could freeze or burn you in hours. The animals hunted in packs with claws and teeth. Even the tiny invisible life forms could kill you from inside. But humans lived there. More than lived there. They ruled it. The orientation meeting began in the Great Hall. Hundreds of young aliens filled the space. Their different bodies created a strange mix of shapes and colors. Some floated, some crawled. Some stood on 2 legs like humans, while others had 4 or 6 or 8. Instructor Haxtor stepped forward. He was a Gorlak veteran with scars covering 3 of his 4 arms. His voice boomed across the hall, making smaller species jump. "Welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy," he said. "Here you will learn to fight. You will learn to survive. You will learn to protect the innocent across the galaxy." Dae-Ho and So Young listened quietly. Their eyes moved constantly, checking exits and watching other recruits. This behavior made Commander Velthar uncomfortable. They acted like soldiers who expected attacks at any moment. The humans were assigned to special quarters, designed for their atmosphere and gravity needs. As they walked through the corridors, other recruits whispered about them. The whispers were not friendly. "Look how soft they are," said a young Gorlak. "They have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. How did such weak creatures reach the stars?" Zephyrian named Quintal laughed with sounds like breaking glass. "They must have been lucky," he said, "or maybe their planet is not as dangerous as the reports claim." But the older species stayed quiet. Some had heard rumors from traders and diplomats. Earth was different. Humans were different. The smart ones decided to wait and watch before making judgments. That night in the mess hall, humans sat alone. They ate their food without complaining, even though it was designed for alien biology. So Young wrinkled her nose at the taste, but kept eating. They spoke to each other in their own language, which sounded harsh and quick to alien ears. "This place will be interesting," So Young said in Korean, knowing no translators were programmed for their language yet. Dae-ho nodded, watching a group of cricks huddled together for warmth. "They have no idea what we can do," he replied. "Should we show them?" So Young smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Where's the fun in that?" she asked. Across the hall, Quintal, the largest Zephyrian recruit, talked with his friends. His crystal body was almost 3 meters tall and weighed more than 10 humans. He had won every fight on his home world. His strength was legendary among his people. Something about the humans bothered him, but he could not figure out what. They looked fragile with their soft skin and small bodies. They carried no visible weapons and showed no signs of the genetic modifications that helped other species survive in space. Yet every instinct inherited from his crystal ancestors told him to be careful around them. This made no sense to his logical mind. How could such weak-looking creatures be dangerous? The answer would come tomorrow during their first combat training session. Commander Velthar had specifically asked to watch this class. He had trained recruits from dozens of species, but never humans before. Secret reports from Earth were classified at the highest levels, but rumors spread through military networks like water through cracks. They said humans had turned their entire planet into a weapon. They said human children played games that would break the minds of adult warriors from peaceful species. They said humans had conquered their world not through better technology or psychic powers, but through pure, stubborn refusal to give up, ever. As the station prepared for sleep cycle, the various species settled into their different environmental needs. Some required hot chambers, others needed cold. Some breathed different gases, while others absorbed energy directly from radiation. The humans needed simple air and moderate temperature, just like several other species, but they did not sleep like the others. Velthar checked the security monitors and saw them taking turns staying awake. One slept while the other watched. This was not normal behavior for Academy recruits. Most species felt safe in the heavily protected station. Only species from the most dangerous worlds maintained such. Vigilance. Tomorrow would bring combat training. All species would demonstrate their natural fighting abilities. The Gorlaks would show their strength. The Zephyrians would display their near indestructibility. The Cricks would prove their group tactics, and the humans would reveal why every predator instinct in the galaxy whispered warnings about Earth. The combat training arena was bigger than most cities. Its walls could create any environment from frozen ice worlds to molten metal planets. But today, it was set to normal conditions that most species could handle. Commander Velthar stood on the observation deck high above the floor, watching through his compound eyes. Instructor Haxtor marched into the center of the arena. His 4 massive arms swung as he walked. Scars covered his body from 17 different wars across the galaxy. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had survived when others died. "Today you learn basic fighting," he announced to the 100 recruits gathered below. "We start with simple grabbing and holding techniques. You will work with different species to understand how each type of body fights." The recruits moved around looking for partners. Most stayed with their own kind. The crystal Zephyrians grouped together, making musical sounds. The insect Cricks formed their usual swarms. The gas cloud nebula folk drifted slightly above the ground in their protective suits. Dae-ho and So Young stood apart from the others. They watched with the patient eyes of experienced soldiers. Both had served in Earth military forces, surviving conflicts that would have destroyed warriors from gentler worlds. Their calm behavior made other recruits more nervous than any aggressive display would have. First demonstration. Haxtor continued scanning the group with his battle-tested eyes. His gaze stopped on Quintal, the largest Zephyrian recruit. The crystal being stood almost 3 meters tall with a body that could survive. Direct hits from energy weapons. "You crystal being," he called. "Step forward and show these soft creatures how real warriors fight." Quintal moved with the smooth grace of his species. Light bent and twisted through his transparent body, creating beautiful patterns on the arena floor. On his home world, he was considered a great fighter whose strength was known throughout his region. "Choose a partner for basic grappling," Haxtor instructed. "Show them what Zephyrian power looks like." Quintal looked across the gathered recruits, searching for someone who might give him a decent fight. The Gorlaks were too bulky and slow. The Cricks were too small and worked better in groups. The Nebula folk were too insubstantial to grapple with. His faceted eyes settled on the humans, and something deep in his crystal structure whispered warnings he chose to ignore. The female human stood quietly, looking small and delicate compared to his massive form. She probably weighed less than 1/10 of his body mass. Her soft flesh looked vulnerable against his diamond-hard exterior. "The small human female," he announced, with his voice ringing like bells. "This should teach everyone about real strength." Worried sounds came from the watching recruits. Many species had met humans in peaceful settings, but few had seen them in combat. Most galactic citizens believed humans were fragile, short-lived creatures who had reached space through luck rather than skill. So Young stepped forward without hesitation. Her movements were smooth and controlled. She wore the standard academy training uniform, which looked too big on her small frame. Her black hair was tied back simply, and her dark eyes showed no fear as she looked up at her massive opponent. "Basic grappling rules," Haxtor explained to the crowd. "First to get a submission hold or forced surrender wins. No weapons, no killing moves. This is teaching, not execution." Dayho crossed his arms and settled back to watch. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. He had fought with So Young many times during their military service. She had earned her place in Earth Special Forces not through size or strength, but through speed, technique, and an almost supernatural ability to read opponents. Other recruits formed a circle around the fighters. Their various communication methods created a symphony of clicks, hums, whistles, and harmonic sounds. Some species started betting pools with odds heavily favoring the massive Zephyrian. Commander Velthar leaned forward on the observation deck. He had read classified reports about human combat abilities, but seeing was different from reading. The female human looked impossibly small next to her crystal opponent, yet something about her stance suggested deadly competence. Quintal raised, his 4 arms each capable of crushing most organic beings. His crystal structure could withstand plasma cannon hits, and his strength was legendary, even among his own people. The human before him looked like she would break at first contact. So Young bounced lightly on her feet, keeping her body loose and ready. Years of training had taught her to read opponents instantly. Everything about the crystal being screamed amateur. He was strong, certainly, but strength without technique was just violence waiting to be redirected. "Begin," Haxtor roared. What happened next would become legend throughout the academy. It would be retold in dozens of languages across 47 species. Military instructors would study it for years. But in that moment, it was simply a human doing what humans did best, surviving against impossible odds. Quintal lunged forward, with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. His massive crystal arms swept toward So Young in a crushing embrace that would have pulverized most organic beings. The move was powerful, direct, and completely predictable to someone trained in human combat methods. So Young did not try to block or match strength with strength. Instead, she did something that violated every principle of combat that Quintal understood. She moved into his attack rather than away from it. She dropped low and slid under his reaching arms like water flowing around a stone. Her small hands found purchase on his lower arm joint, and she used his own momentum against him. Physics became her weapon as she applied leverage principles that humans had perfected over thousands of years of warfare. Quintal found himself suddenly off balance, his massive frame tilting in a direction his inner equilibrium said was impossible. The watching recruits gasped in various alien languages as the towering Zephyrian stumbled. Several Krees clicked their mandibles in confusion, while a group of nebula folk swirled in their suits with what might have been excitement. But Quintal was not finished. His species had evolved from crystal growths that learned to move, and their bodies were remarkably adaptable. He managed to catch himself using his lower arms as supports while his upper arms reached for the human who had somehow gotten behind him. So Young was already gone. She moved with a fluidity that seemed to defy physics. Her compact frame allowed her to change direction instantly. To the alien observers, she appeared to simply vanish and reappear in different positions around her massive opponent. Dae-ho watched with professional appreciation, as his friend demonstrated techniques they had both learned in the brutal training programs of Earth military. Humans had developed fighting systems based not on raw strength or natural weapons, but on the principle that any force could be redirected, any opponent could be unbalanced, and any weakness could be exploited. The arena filled with excited alien. Voices as species that had never seen such fighting tried to understand what they were witnessing. Quintal spun around trying to track his elusive opponent, but human reaction times were much faster than most species realized. While his crystal structure made him incredibly tough, it also made him slower than organic beings. So Young danced around him like a ghost, always just out of reach. Then she decided to end the demonstration, moving with deadly precision. So Young grabbed Quintal's extended arm with both hands. But instead of trying to overpower him, she positioned herself perfectly and applied a joint lock that no species in the galaxy had ever seen before. The technique had been developed by human martial artists over thousands of years, refined through countless conflicts, and perfected by warriors who understood that survival often meant defeating larger, stronger opponents. Quintal felt his arm joint begin to separate in a way that his crystal structure was never designed to handle. The sensation was completely alien to him. His people were virtually indestructible by normal standards, with bodies capable of withstanding tremendous impacts and pressures. But So Young had found the exact point where his crystalline structure was vulnerable. The pain was beyond description. Not the clean break of shattered crystal, but a slow, grinding separation that sent shock waves through his entire nervous system. His other arms flailed wildly, trying to reach the small human who had somehow attached herself to him like a parasite. "Yield," So Young said quietly, but her voice carried clearly through the suddenly silent arena. She applied slightly more pressure, and Quintal felt something in his shoulder joint begin to crack with sounds like breaking glass. Pride fought with agony in the Zephyrian mind. He was a warrior of his people, trained from crystal birth to never surrender. His strength was legendary, his body nearly indestructible. How could this soft, fragile creature be causing him such pain? Commander Velthar stood up in the observation deck, his compound eyes wide with amazement. The reports had been true. Humans were not just another species lucky enough to achieve space travel. They were something far more dangerous. They were living weapons forged by the cruelest planet in known space. Haxtor moved closer to the fighters, ready to stop the match if necessary. In all his years of training recruits, he had never seen anything like this. The human female had essentially neutralized an opponent 3 times her size and infinitely more durable through pure technique and understanding of biomechanics. Other recruits pressed closer, straining to understand what they were witnessing. The Gorlaks flexed their arms nervously, suddenly uncertain about their own combat abilities. The Kricks chittered among themselves in rapid, high-pitched conversations about what this meant for their own fighting methods. Several nebula folk had formed a discussion cloud, their gaseous bodies swirling with patterns that indicated deep concern. If humans could do this to Zephyrians, what could they do to species that relied on different advantages? The insectoid beings began calculating rapidly. Their compound eyes processed multiple scenarios simultaneously. In every simulation, they ran the small human female found ways to exploit weaknesses they had not even known existed in their own bodies. Quintal Pride finally cracked along with his shoulder joint. The pain was becoming unbearable, and his crystal structure was beginning to show visible stress fractures along the point where So Young maintained her hold. The fractures spread like spider webs through his arm, threatening to destroy the entire limb. I yield. He gasped, the words resonating through his crystal body like a funeral bell. The sound echoed off the arena walls, carrying defeat and humiliation to every corner of the massive space. So Young released him, immediately stepping back with the same casual grace she had shown throughout the entire encounter. There was no triumph. In her expression, no satisfaction at her victory. She had simply solved a problem efficiently and moved on to the next task. Quintal dropped to one knee, cradling his damaged shoulder joint with his remaining 3 arms. The stress fractures in his crystal structure would take weeks to heal properly if they healed at all. Some damage to Zephyrian crystal matrices was permanent, leaving scars that lasted for centuries. The arena fell into complete silence. 46 different species tried to process what they had just witnessed. A creature that appeared fragile and weak had just defeated one of the most physically powerful recruits in the academy through methods none of them understood or could replicate. Deho allowed himself a small smile. The real education was just beginning. Soon these aliens would understand that humans were not just another species joining galactic civilization. They were something unprecedented in the known galaxy. Haxtor stepped forward, his massive frame casting shadows over the fallen Zephyrian. His scarred face showed respect and concern in equal measure. In 17 wars, he had seen many warriors fall, but never quite like this. Medical team to arena floor, he called into his communication device. We have a code blue injury requiring immediate crystal matrix repair. The medical team arrived within minutes, their various species providing different types of expertise. The lead medic was a tentacled being whose species specialized in structural repairs. She examined Quintal's damaged shoulder with instruments designed to analyze crystal-based life forms. I have never seen damage patterns like this, she announced to her team. It appears someone found the exact stress points in Zephyrian crystal lattice and applied pressure with surgical precision. This level of anatomical knowledge should be impossible for a first contact situation. Her words carried across the arena, causing new waves of concern among the watching recruits. How could the human female know exactly where to attack a crystal being she had never encountered before? What kind of training produced such instinctive understanding of alien physiology? Commander. Velthar was already requesting emergency meetings with the Academy senior staff. This demonstration had revealed capabilities that would require immediate reassessment of human integration protocols. If humans could instinctively analyze and exploit weaknesses in alien anatomy, what did that mean for galactic security? So Young walked over to where Deho waited, her expression calm and professional. She showed no signs of stress or excitement, despite having just accomplished something that military analysts would study for decades. That was educational, she said quietly in Korean as medical teams worked on the injured Zephyrian. I think they are beginning to understand. Deho nodded, watching the faces of alien recruits around them. Fear, respect, confusion, and calculation showed in dozens of different ways across species that had never needed to worry about predators more dangerous than themselves. The lesson was just beginning. Soon these aliens would learn that humans had not conquered Earth through superior technology or numbers. They had survived and thrived through an absolutely ruthless dedication to winning at any cost, combined with an evolutionary heritage that made them the ultimate adaptive predators. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities for humans to demonstrate why their species was uniquely suited for a galaxy that was far more dangerous than most civilizations realized. The medical bay hummed with activity as healer Zixara examined Quintal-damaged shoulder through her specialized equipment. The Zephyrian lay on a treatment platform designed for crystal-based life forms, taking up most of the available space. Stress fractures ran through his shoulder like broken glass, and several important crystal structures had been completely moved out of place. "I have never seen damage like this," Zixara said, as her tentacles moved over the control panels. The medical computer could not understand this type of precise structural damage to Zephyrian anatomy. "It is as if someone found the exact weakness in your crystal structure and applied pressure with perfect knowledge of how to cause maximum damage." Quintal remained silent, staring at the ceiling. His pride was as shattered as his shoulder. Around him, other injured recruits received treatment for normal training injuries, but none of them looked at the ceiling with the hollow expression of someone whose entire understanding of the universe had been destroyed in less than 5 minutes. In the Academy main briefing room, Commander Velthar called an emergency meeting of all senior staff. Holographic displays showed footage of the combat session from multiple angles, each one more disturbing than the last. The alien officers watched in fascination and growing fear as So Young dismantled her opponent with terrifying efficiency. Run. The analysis again. Velthar ordered his exoskeleton clicking with nervous energy. His compound eyes processed multiple data streams simultaneously, but the results never changed, no matter how many times he reviewed them. The computer showed a biomechanical breakdown of every human movement. Each action was highlighted and explained from her initial evasion to the final submission hold. The precision was inhuman in its perfection, with every movement calculated for maximum effect using minimum energy. Her reaction time is 40%. Faster than galactic average, reported Science Officer Kethamira, whose multiple eyes processed data streams faster than most computers. Her strength-to-weight ratio exceeds most known species. But more disturbing is her instinctive understanding of structural weak points across different alien physiologies that she has never encountered before. Instructor Haxtor crossed his scarred arms over his massive chest. His expression showed what might have been admiration or fear. "In 17 wars, I have never seen combat technique like this." She fought as if she had studied Zephyrian anatomy for years, yet this was her first encounter with a crystal-based life form. The implications hung in the air like poison gas. If humans could instinctively analyze and exploit weaknesses in alien physiology, what did that mean for galactic security? What did it mean for the thousands of species that had lived in relative peace, never needing to develop such specialized combat skills? Meanwhile, in the recruit quarters, word of the demonstration had spread like wildfire through the Academy communication networks. 46 species whispered, clicked, harmonized, and transmitted their concerns about the humans among them. The humans who had seemed so harmless, so fragile, so utterly unremarkable just hours earlier. Deho sat in the human section of the mess hall, calmly eating his evening meal while dozens of alien eyes watched his every movement. So Young joined him, moving with the same casual grace that had so thoroughly dominated her opponent. Neither human seemed affected by the atmosphere of nervous tension surrounding them. The Gorlaks are avoiding eye contact. So Young observed quietly. In Korean, taking a bite of synthetic protein that tasted like cardboard. The cricks keep clustering together whenever we walk by. Even the nebula folk are giving us extra space in their containment suits. Deho nodded, noting the behavioral changes among their fellow recruits. They are beginning to understand that we are not what we appear to be. The question is what they will do with that understanding. Across the mess hall, groups of alien recruits huddled together in species-specific clusters, their various forms. of communication created a symphony of concerned discussion. The Zephyrians resonated with crystalline anxiety, casting nervous light patterns on the walls. The insectoid cricks chittered rapidly among themselves, their compound eyes constantly tracking human movements. But it was the Gorlaks who provided the most telling reaction. These massive four-armed warriors had dominated combat training for decades. Their natural strength and aggressive nature made them ideal soldiers. Now they sat in unusual silence, their scarred faces troubled as they tried to process what they had witnessed. Groktor, the largest of the Gorlak recruits, finally voiced what many were thinking. His deep voice carried across the mess hall, causing conversations to pause as other species strained to understand his words. If the small human female could do that to a Zephyrian, he said slowly, what could she do to us? What could either of them do to any of us? The question echoed through the mess hall in various languages and communication methods. What could humans do to species that relied on strength or natural armor or superior technology? What advantages did these Deathworlders possess that made them so dangerous despite their apparent physical limitations? The answer came from an unexpected source. Elder Vashatai, an ancient nebula folk philosopher who served as the Academy cultural advisor, drifted over to the Gorlak table in his containment suit. His gaseous form swirled with patterns that indicated deep thought and growing concern. You are asking the wrong question, Vashatai artificial voice translated his chemical communications. The question is not what they can do to us. The question is why they developed such capabilities in the first place. His words carried across the mess hall, causing conversations to pause as recruits strained to understand his meaning. The old philosopher had studied dozens of species across centuries of life, and his wisdom was respected throughout the Academy. Consider their world. Vashatai continued his gaseous form, shifting with emphasis. A planet so hostile that every single day of existence requires constant vigilance against death. Weather that kills without warning, animals that hunt in coordinated packs with weapons evolution gave them, plants that poison or trap or devour unwary creatures. Even the microscopic life forms seek to destroy larger organisms from within. The implications began to sink in as alien minds tried to comprehend such an existence. Most species had evolved on worlds where cooperation and peaceful coexistence were possible, where intelligence could develop without constant threat of annihilation from the environment itself. They did not choose to become predators. Vashatai explained his form, pulsing with each translated word. Their world made that choice. For them, millions of years ago, every human alive today is descended from ancestors who survived challenges that would destroy entire civilizations. They carry within their genetic memory the accumulated knowledge of billions of successful hunts, trillions of successful escapes, and the refined instincts of the ultimate survivors. In the sudden silence that followed, Day-Ho and So Young continued, eating their meal unaware that they had just been revealed as something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. They were living weapons forged by the cruelest planet in known space. Products of an evolutionary arms race so intense that it had created beings capable of turning anything into a weapon and anyone into prey. The mess hall remained quiet as species that had never known real predators tried to understand what it meant to sit next to creatures whose every instinct was honed for survival against impossible odds. 3 weeks after the demonstration that left Quintal's shoulder permanently scarred, the Academy had settled into an uneasy routine. Human recruits found themselves treated with a mixture of fascination and fearful respect that none of them had expected. Training schedules were quietly changed to make sure humans worked with other humans whenever possible, though officially this was explained as accommodation for their unique physiology. Quintal had returned to active duty, though his repaired shoulder joint bore permanent crystal scarring that would serve as a lifelong reminder of his encounter with human combat techniques. He moved differently now, with less arrogance and more awareness of his surroundings. When So Young passed him in the corridors, he stepped aside respectfully, his massive frame pressing against the wall to give her plenty of space. The change in academy culture was subtle, but deep. Combat instructors began trying to teach human techniques to other species, though they quickly discovered that what came naturally to humans required years of study for aliens to understand. The concepts of redirecting force, exploiting structural weaknesses, and using an opponent's strength against them were completely new to beings who had relied on natural advantages for millions of years. Commander Velthar observed these changes. From his office reviewing reports that painted an increasingly complex picture of human capabilities. Intelligence assessments from various species described Earth inhabitants as the ultimate adaptive survivors capable of finding solutions to challenges that would destroy other civilizations completely. His door chimed, and Instructor Haxtor entered with his characteristic heavy footsteps. The massive Gorlak-scarred face bore an expression of troubled respect mixed with something that might have been fear. "Commander, we need to discuss the human training protocols." Haxtor began without his usual military formalities. "Yesterday, during advanced combat simulation, the male human demonstrated techniques that I have never encountered in 17 wars across the galaxy." Velthar gestured for his subordinate to continue, though he suspected he knew what was coming. The reports from other training sessions had been equally disturbing in their implications. Dae-Ho Kim was placed in a scenario designed to be impossible. Haxtor explained his forearms, gesturing with unusual emphasis, surrounded by 12 opponents, in a confined space armed only with standard academy equipment. The simulation was created to teach recruits about tactical retreat and knowing when to surrender gracefully. The commander compound eyes focused intently on his instructor. And what happened in this impossible scenario? He eliminated all 12 opponents in under 4 minutes, Haxtor replied, his voice carrying a mixture of awe and deep concern. He turned everything in the environment into weapons. The lighting fixtures became projectiles that struck with deadly accuracy. Pieces of debris became improvised clubs that multiplied his striking power. He even used the artificial gravity generators as tactical advantages by predicting how opponents would move in changing gravitational fields. Velthar was not entirely surprised. Human reports had mentioned their species' unusual relationship with their environment, treating everything around them as potential tools or weapons. But seeing it demonstrated in controlled conditions was different from reading about it in classified military files. More disturbing, Haxtor continued, was his tactical approach. He did not fight like a warrior seeking glory or testing his skills. He fought like a hunter whose only goal was the death of his prey. Every movement was calculated to conserve energy while maximizing damage to his opponents. He showed no emotional response to violence, no hesitation about causing harm to simulated beings. It was efficient in a way that troubles my warrior spirit deeply. The two alien officers sat in contemplative silence, processing the implications of what they had learned. Humans did not just survive their death world through luck or stubborn determination. They had evolved into something uniquely dangerous, shaped by millions of years of constant mortal threat into creatures that viewed everything as either tool or target. Meanwhile, in the Academy recreational area, So Young found herself surrounded by a group of curious Krix recruits. The insectoid beings had overcome their initial fear and were now asking her detailed questions about human culture and capabilities. "Is it true that human children are taught combat techniques from an early age?" clicked Zethira, her compound eyes reflecting genuine fascination mixed with concern. "Our young are protected and sheltered until they reach maturity." So Young considered the question carefully, knowing that her answer would be analyzed and discussed throughout the academy within hours. "We call them games," she replied through the universal translator. "Hide and seek teaches camouflage and evasion techniques. Tag develops pursuit and escape tactics. Even our sports involve controlled violence and strategic thinking about defeating opponents." The Krix chittered among themselves, their rapid communication processing the implications of this information. What kind of species turned survival training into children entertainment? How did this affect their psychological development and approach to conflict? Our elders tell stories to preserve wisdom and cultural memory, added another Crix whose name translated roughly to seeker of truth. What stories do human elders tell their young? So Young smiled, but there was something predatory in the expression that made the insectoid beings instinctively step back several paces. We tell stories about monsters, she said, with casual matter-of-factness. And more importantly, we tell detailed stories about how to kill them efficiently. The conversation continued, but the underlying tension was unmistakable. These alien beings were beginning to understand that humans were not just another species that had achieved space travel through technological development. They were something unprecedented in galactic civilization, an entire species forged by constant mortal danger into the ultimate survivors who viewed conflict as just another problem to be solved through applied intelligence. In the Academy Strategic Planning Center, military analysts from dozens of species worked frantically to understand the implications of human capabilities for galactic security and military doctrine. Computer models ran thousands of scenarios trying to predict how human techniques might be applied in various combat situations across different environments and against different types of opponents. The results were uniformly disturbing regardless of the parameters used. In simulation after simulation, small groups of humans defeated much larger forces through superior tactics, environmental exploitation, and an almost supernatural ability to identify and exploit weaknesses in their opponents, both physical and psychological. But perhaps most troubling was their psychological profile during combat situations. Humans showed no significant stress response to violence, treating lethal combat as simply another problem to be solved efficiently and completely. They formed strong emotional bonds with their allies while maintaining complete emotional detachment from their enemies during conflict. They were, in essence, the perfect soldiers, created not by genetic engineering or technological enhancement, but by the simple process of natural selection operating under the harshest possible conditions for millions of years without interruption. As the Academy lights dimmed for the night, alien recruits across dozens of species settled into their rest periods with a new understanding of their place in the galaxy. They had been joined by creatures whose very existence challenged every assumption about civilization, cooperation, and the nature of intelligence itself. 6 months after the incident that left Quintal's shoulder permanently scarred, the Galactic Defense Academy had transformed in ways no one could have anticipated. The integration of human combat techniques into standard curriculum had revolutionized military training across 47 species, though the results were mixed at best. Commander Velthar stood before the Academy's governing council, his exoskeleton polished to a ceremonial shine as he delivered his final report on the human integration program. Representatives from across the galaxy attended either in person or through holographic projection, their various forms creating a bizarre tapestry of alien life. The experiment has exceeded all expectations, Velthar began, his compound eyes scanning the assembled delegates. Human recruits have demonstrated capabilities that force us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about combat, strategy, and survival. The presentation screens displayed statistical analyses that painted a remarkable picture. Human recruits showed injury rates 60% lower than galactic average, not because they were more durable, but because they were better at avoiding damage entirely. Their tactical assessments consistently outperformed military AIs in complex scenarios. Most significantly, they displayed an almost supernatural ability to adapt their techniques to counter different alien physiologies. Elder Zorthak of the Crystal Hegemony, whose people included Quintal, spoke with the resonant voice of living stone. These humans are dangerous. Their very presence has disrupted the natural order of Academy hierarchy. Recruits who should be confident warriors now second-guess themselves when facing human opponents. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council chamber. The psychological impact of human capabilities had proven almost as significant as their physical achievements. Species that had dominated combat training for generations now found themselves struggling with self-doubt. But philosopher Vashitai, his gaseous form swirling within its containment suit, offered a different perspective. Perhaps the disruption was necessary. We had grown complacent, assuming that natural physical advantages guaranteed military superiority. Humans have shown us that intelligence, adaptability, and technique can overcome almost any natural advantage. The debate that followed would reshape galactic military doctrine for generations. Some species argued for limiting human involvement in military operations, fearing that their techniques were too ruthless for civilized warfare. Others wanted to study and replicate human training methods, hoping to enhance their own military capabilities. Meanwhile, in the Academy's advanced training facility, Daeho and So Young had been assigned as instructors, teaching selected alien recruits modified versions of human combat techniques. The irony was not lost on them that they had gone from students to teachers in less than a year. Their first class consisted of volunteers from various species, all of whom had requested human training despite the risks involved. Quintal was among them, his damaged shoulder a constant reminder of his first lesson in human capabilities. "Today we will learn about environmental awareness," So Young announced to her mixed species class. "Humans survive because we understand that everything around us can be either a tool or a weapon." She gestured to the training room, which appeared to be a simple empty space with standard fixtures. "Count the potential weapons in this room." The alien students looked around with confusion. The Gorlak saw empty space suitable for direct combat. The Krix perceived hiding spots for ambush tactics. The gaseous beings noted air current patterns, but none of them saw what the humans saw. "Gravity plates can be overloaded to create disorientation," Daeho explained, pointing to panels in the floor. "Light fixtures provide both illumination control and improvised projectiles. Ventilation grates offer concealment and alternate movement. Routes." As the lesson continued, the alien recruits began to understand why humans were so dangerous. They didn't just fight with weapons or natural abilities. They fought with their entire environment, turning any space into a potential battlefield, where every object became part of their tactical arsenal. Quintal raised one of his repaired arms. "Instructor So Young, how do humans develop this environmental awareness? Is it taught or instinctive?" So Young considered the question carefully. "Both. Human children learn to see their world as filled with opportunities and threats from the moment they can walk. We play games that teach us to use our environment creatively. Our stories celebrate heroes who overcome impossible odds through cleverness and adaptability. The crystalline being processed this information with growing understanding. So every human is essentially trained from childhood to be a warrior, even if they never formally study combat? Not warriors," Daeho corrected gently. "Survivors. There is a difference. Warriors fight to win battles. Survivors fight to go home alive." This distinction would become central to the Academy's new understanding of human psychology. Humans didn't approach combat with the glory-seeking mindset common to many warrior species. They approached it as a problem to be solved as efficiently as possible, with survival being the only victory that mattered. As training continued throughout the year, the Academy's alien recruits gradually adapted to the human presence. Some species proved more capable of learning human techniques than others. The Gorlaks struggled with the concept of using minimal force, their warrior culture emphasizing overwhelming power. The Krix excelled at environmental manipulation, their insectoid nature giving them advantages in unexpected spaces, but all of them gained a new respect for the small, seemingly fragile beings from Earth. They learned that humans had not conquered their death world through superior technology or natural weapons, but through an indomitable refusal to surrender, combined with an ability to find solutions where none should exist. The final graduation ceremony was unlike any in Academy history. Human recruits stood alongside their alien classmates, no longer the mysterious unknowns who had arrived months earlier. They had become teachers, examples, and most importantly, friends to beings whose nightmares had once featured creatures exactly like them. Quintal approached so young after the ceremony, his massive crystal form moving with the respectful caution he had learned to show around humans. "Instructor, I wanted to thank you for the lesson you taught me." So Young looked up at the towering alien, her expression softening. "Which lesson was that?" "That strength without wisdom is just violence waiting to happen," he replied, his voice resonating with genuine gratitude. "My shoulder will always remind me that true power comes from understanding, not force." As the graduates dispersed to assignments throughout the galaxy, they carried with them more than just new combat techniques. They carried an understanding that intelligence and adaptability could overcome seemingly impossible challenges, that survival often required thinking beyond conventional wisdom, and that the galaxy's most dangerous predators might look like its most harmless prey. The humans had not just joined galactic civilization. They had changed it forever, one lesson at a time.